Nikata Yansi Yowi the up. Ule Galana East, Pude, Ale Teta the up. Saye Asaya, Ule Galana East, Tinhawo, Nani, Na, in a small the up. Canopsi, Tinhawo, the up. Don't stick a he, asti, the up. To call it, the toddy, the hasty, the toddy, the up. To call it, the rojas up. Yasti, the up. Kaga, Danteki, Nevi, Isa.
Welcome to White Feather Farm, home of the great American bison. My name's Freddie Perkins. I'm the owner and operator of White Feather Farm here in Wadsworth, Ohio. We have a unique operation here. We raise the great American bison. They're not an endangered species any longer. A lot of people over the years have considered them to be an endangered species, but myself and other private ranchers have started raising the great American bison as an alternative meat source for the American public. It has half the calories, half the cholesterol that beef has, and there seems to be a great demand in America for this kind of red meat product. We have approximately 100 to 150 head here at this farm at all times. We have mainly cows and calves here right now. Most of the bulls are at the other farm because we're having what we call baby bison days, July 3rd and 4th weekend here for the public. And what we basically did was just open up the farm to the public because their response of wanting to see the farm and the baby bison every year. And we have a free admission, and we've invited some buckskinners to come, some people with some teepees, some frontier reenactment. They're doing some craft work just to educate the public and let them see what it was like before 1840, especially in that time period when the bison played such an important part in the history of selling this country. There were approximately 75 million bison in America when the white men came to America. But at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, that number had dwindled to 500. And what happened was there were 5 men who captured 4 or 5 calves apiece, and they started raising the bison. These were big beef ranchers. They started raising the bison because they hated to see them removed from the plains. Because of those 5 men, bison are now available to private ranchers like myself, and there are approximately 100,000 head in America today. There are more bison on private ranches than there are in public herds now. And in the next 20 years, you'll see more and more farmers involved in this type of agriculture, simply because it's profitable and it's demanded by the public. To tell you a little bit about the bison, the cows calve when they're 3 years old. That's the first year they'll have a calf. But they all live until they're 40 to 45 years of age, having a calf every year. So the herds are reproducing quite rapidly. The bulls, we have 2 breeding bulls here. They're 3 years old this year. We usually don't keep a bull past 5 simply because they're too hard to handle. But what we've tried to do here at White Feather Farm, at the turn of the century, there were only those 500 bison, and genetically, the gene pool had shrunk so low that the poorest quality animals were available. What we've done to correct that, we've entered a program with Stormont Labs in California, and we blood type all of our bison. And in so doing that, we can tell each allele group and where those bison are from, and that way we can select bulls and cows to breed together to get a bigger bison. In America, in the earlier days, they had bison that weighed anywhere from 27 to 3,700 pounds. And we've lost that kind of animal up until the last 5 years when myself and some other fellows have started doing the intensive breeding with the bison. And as you see the bulls and the cows here, you'll see that they're a bigger type of bison that you would have looked at in pictures years ago. And that's simply because of the blood testing and the genetics that we've done with them. We like to consider ourselves as part of the great comeback of American bison. We expect the herds to just increase in the next 20 years. And I had a meeting, ironically, with Ted Turner here a month ago in Savannah, Georgia. And Ted said he expected within 40 years that the domestic beef market would be dead in America and bison would take over. And I can agree with that because the meat tastes so good and it is so good for you. To tell you a little bit about the cows, they have their calves every year about the same time, May, June, and July. When they're born, they only weigh about 30 pounds, and they're wee little calves, and they're real red. They look like a Jersey cow, in fact. But after they're on the ground, they increase in size so quickly they can be 100 pounds within just a few weeks. You notice, too, that they shed their coats in the summer. This is their shedding time. They look a little shaggy, but they shed all that wool off, and we go out and we pick the wool up, and then we have a lady who spins that for us, and then weaves that into blankets and vests and hats and caps and those kind of things. They'll shed all that wool off of there, and it'll be gone about the middle of August. And then about October, they start putting all their wool back on again, and they'll get real shaggy. The Lord created these animals to survive outside. You'll notice the sun beating down on them, and they never seek shade. And the amazing thing about that, a domestic cow has approximately 700 hairs per square inch. A bison has 7,000 hairs per square inch. That's double what a beaver has, and beaver's a water animal. Well, with that heavy coat, it enables them to lay outside when it's 20 below zero and never seek shelter. And the amazing thing with that, they also use that same coat to protect them in the summer, and they never seek shade. These animals here stand out in the sun and out here on the dry lot. They love dirt, they love mud, but they can go clear back to the woods if they want, but they very seldom ever have to seek any kind of shelter from the elements. They're just an amazing creature. You can tell the difference between a bull and a cow real quick just looking at them. A bull, his horns come out and go straight up. And a cow, her horns curve. So as you look through the herd here, if you see an animal's horns that curve in or curve forward, you can tell right away that's a cow. And if you see an animal with the horns straight up, you can tell that's a bull. And that's the way the Native Americans did. When they stampeded the bison, they would ride into the herd, and they would look for the horns. And the horns that were straight up, they knew those were the bulls. And they would shoot those primarily for their shoulder and their hip leather to use for shields. The cows they would seek out with the curved horns because they had a lighter type of leather, a silkier type of wool for their robes, and a better tasting meat. The cows have an extra layer of fat on them than the bulls do, so that's what they would make their pemmican out of. if you shot a bull, there wouldn't be a lot of fat on there, so they would specifically seek out the cows so they could get the buffalo fat and make their pemmican and have their fat supply through the winter. They're truly a unique creature. They never cease to amaze me. You notice my fence is 4.5 feet tall, but a bison can jump 6 foot standing still and never bat an eye. But you notice these animals stay in simply because they're content. If they're watered and they're fed and they have their calves here, they don't have any desire to come outside the fence. Basically, I have the fence to keep the people out of there. Because you can keep bison in with one strand of fence. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. Because with that extra density of hair, 7,000 hairs per square inch, they sense the electric power a lot easier. So one strand of electric wire will keep a bison in normally. But you notice we've got a corral here too, and that corral is 7 foot tall. When we want to transport bison from one farm to the other farm, we put them in that corral. Because when they get in there and get excited, that's when they want to jump. And it's all set up in there with gates that we can swing the gates around with no harm to the bison and move them very quickly and run through the chute and put them on the truck. You'll also notice here on the farm, we have a red palpation cage over here. It's bright red, it's easy to see. We run the bison in there twice a year. And we put them in there, we vaccinate, we treat for parasites, we do a herd check, a health check, we ear tag. You notice these bison all have ear tags in them. We keep records on every one of them, age, how many times they've calved, disposition, if they're angry, if they're happy kind of cows, those kind. And we write all that down for the workers here. And so we handle them twice a year. And the interesting thing about handling them, here on the farm, I'm the head buffalo. When these bison see me, I'm the head bull here on the farm. And the reason for that, if you watch these bison for very long, in this herd here, there's one cow who's dominant, and she's the boss. And everything she does, all the other cows will do. And she asserts her dominance by touching the other bison. And if you watch, a head bison can walk up and touch every bison below that, and then the next bison in charge down below that, but a young bison can't touch an older bison. So what I do every year, I run through that palpation cage, lock him in there with a headlock, and then I open the front chute so they see me, and then I rub them. I put my hand on the shoulder and I talk to them. That way, they can't get away, and they have to show submission to me, and I'm doing the touching. Then I turn them out of the palpation cage, and since I've controlled them, I'm head buffalo. In fact, if I'd walk in that pen and scratch around somewhere and walk out, every bison in that herd would walk up there to the same place I was, one after the next, asserting their dominance and what order they're in that pecking order. Open that door. Yeah.
Doing yesterday, we take these little calves through here and we vaccinate and ear tag and worm. And that initial vaccination is a brucellosis TB vaccination. Then we take the bull calves and we put an ear tag in their right ear, and in the heifer calves we put the ear tag in the left ear. That way when we're working through the chute here and we run the older animals, you notice yesterday we ran the older animals through here, we could just look really simple where the tag was in the ear. And if the tag was in the right ear, we knew that that animal did not get a 7-way vaccine, which is a booster shot. We give all the heifer cows, all the mature cows, we give them a booster shot every year, which is a 7-way vaccine. So that's why we run through the chute system. And it's real simple to take and look without lifting up the tail to find out what sex they are. We can just look up there at the head, see where the ear tag's at. And if it's in the left ear, they get a 7-way vaccine. If it's not, then we pass that vaccine up, because what happens, if you give that vaccine to an adult male buffalo, it can make him sterile. So that's the reason we put the ear tags on the right side. We can tell exactly where they go. We handle animals. We give all the shots ourselves, do all the ear tagging, but by law, you have to have a state veterinarian here to actually do the vaccination first time around. And he puts the state tag in their ear, which then that shows that they've been treated with the calf hood vaccine. And what that does, that exposes the animal to the actual disease. It gives them brucellosis, gives them TB, but a real minor amount, so the body will build an immunity to it. Then they theoretically should be free of any possibility of ever contracting the disease if they come into contact with diseased animals from another herd. So it's a safety measure is what it is. But I found out there in Yellowstone, those animals got brucellosis, but it looks like they have a natural resistance to that. And they had an initial outbreak of it, and some of the animals aborted their calves, which is the result of brucellosis. But now it looks like the buffalo have healed themselves, and they're calving again. So that's kind of interesting to see what that'll do. They're a hardy creature, and that's nice to see. I'm glad to see what Yellowstone's doing out there. And ironically, people see us run these animals through the palpation cage, and they see these great big bulls and they think, well, it's just terrible to run one of these big bulls through the chute. And it is. It's a lot of work, but it's harder to handle those little calves. I think those little calves can jump twice as far as their mother and twice as fast, and they're twice as hard to handle. You'll see them this morning as we come through here. You get one of them locked in that cage, and if you don't get his head caught right away, they just spring up, and it's like a bunch of turkeys inside a cage somewhere. They just jump everywhere. We had one yesterday, almost jumped up on top of the chute there, and they're all broken-hearted this morning because we separated them yesterday, and they're all snorting around like a bunch of little pigs because they miss their mamas. But we're waiting on the veterinarian. As soon as he gets here, we'll get them turned back out with Mama, and Mama will be happy, and they'll be happy, and maybe they'll settle down a little bit. But we try to minimize as much stress as we can on the animals when we work them. And we put them in a corral system right there where they can't see outside, because if they saw Mama, they'd really be under a lot of stress. This way all they can do is hear. And I suppose in their minds they think they're on one side of a cave wall and Mama's on the other, but at least she's over there. But we'll reunite them. Most of the calves, we used to, when we first started raising bison, we would wean the calves one time a year, all of them, take them off of their mothers. But we found out as long as the animal's fed well and the calves are fed well, when they get about 7 or 8 months old, Mama weans them anyway. She'll take them off of herself. So we've kind of moved into that system more and more. We quit taking them off Mama personally. We just let them stay on Mama until she tells them no more milk. And that's worked real well for us. The older calves, and some of those are 7 or 8 months old, they've already been weaned. They're not snorting around at all, but if you hear the other ones snorting, the ones that are snorting, those are the ones that still are nursing off of Mama, and they're not happy at all. So they'll give us the hardest time going through here. They'll be bawling and snorting, and Mama will be snorting and bawling on the other side. So it might be a little exciting. We'll see. And then after we're done worming the calves and vaccinating, we're going to turn them back in with the cows. and then we're going to let them go for a little romp down through the pasture. They'll be glad to get away from me. They'll be angry with me for a few days. They think it's a while to forgive me, but they don't know it's for their own good. You know, you gotta, when they're confined like this, you have to take care of them. And I always apologize to them, and a couple of days later they forgive me. But I got a couple of them right now. When we wormed them, we have old, we call her, she's number 29, but she's just an evil old thing. And we couldn't figure out why she was so evil yesterday, but here she was on this side, and her calf was on the other side, and they could see each other, and that just didn't, and I was in between the two. So Mama said I'll remove him. So she's not happy with me even today. Her calf's still in here, and she's not happy with me at all. If I walk out there, the tail goes up, and the head goes down, and Freddie goes out. So I'll be glad to get the calves back in there. One on the back. So you just might draw all the fronts, and then come on to the back, but do me about 10 of them there, okay? So it's up to 41. Do both sides. Let me make sure I got everything. Scotty? Put the boards down back there. Goes down back here.
I got him down.
Open this one.
Sean, open that big gate down there first.
Broke the bar yesterday. So I got to hold up here. Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Ready, Sean?
There you go. I'll run these through. I want to turn them out and put them back in where they were. You got a cow coming in there? Okay, Scotty. You keep the gate closed. I get calves coming here. All right? You are? Run them back out of there. There you go. Shut that. Never mind. Shut it, Sean. We just get all the calves there and then turn them out.
I don't want to get in with these calves either.
You don't?
No, they go 100 miles an hour. Dad.
I just have to put the calves in. Got two. Got a heifer. Okay. Wrong one. Do you have I've got ivermectin here.
I've got some. Okay.
I've got some here.
Okay.
Injectable. In the bathroom. Injectable ivermectin. All right. It's in a brown case. Here, Scott.
I know where it was.
All right. Just like that. I'm going to start with 40. That's a heifer. You have to write that down for me, Sarah.
No.
Right in here. Do you have a pen?
They're all over 4 months.
Yeah.
340.
I've been in the cabin. In fact, I got 2 pounds of meat sitting down in my freezer.
Good, you had this in where it was warm.
Yeah. Makes it go a little better,
It's
don't
a
it?
lot better that way.
It was a lot better.
Okay.
Scotty? Scott.
Scotty.
I want to turn it.
You don't want that gate open.
Go ahead and turn him loose there.
All right.
If you want, Doc, I'll make sure he turns the right way.
All right.
Scotty, I need Can you let him out there, Sean?
Come on, Dad.
Open the back gate, but no, yeah.
I see it.
Scotty, run us along down here.
Yeah, I guess he did.
Oh, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
We started raising bison about almost 5 years ago, and if you'd have told me I would raise bison 5 years ago, I would have wondered what would have happened to my life to change it so quickly. I'm a dairy farmer, but what happened was our family's been in America for 200 years, and we're tanners. We dress hides for a living in the winter, and I still carry that tradition on 200 years later. I tanned bison hides for a local farmer here in Medina, Ohio, Willard Stevenson, who owns Medina Hardware. He called me about 5 years ago, and said that he wanted to know how many hides I could tan for him, and I told him whatever he had, and he said he was going to shoot the whole herd. And I thought, well, what are you going to shoot the whole herd for? And he said, well, I'm 81 years old, I want to retire, I want to quit. And I said, why don't you sell them to somebody else? He said, well, you can't just do that with bison. You just can't sell one here and one there. They're a real type of herd animal. He said, no, I don't want to fool with the public. And he said, unless you want them. So I kind of laughed and said, I'm not in. I never even thought about it. Well, 2 days later, he called me and said, I'm going on a trip. There we are. And I ended up being in the bison business. But it was one of the best things I ever did. We started out with just 3 animals from his herd. We brought him here in '88, and we've expanded the herd to approximately 150 now. And that's basically been a response, as I said earlier, to the public's demand and desire for a good, healthy red meat. It's the only red meat that meets the American Heart Association recommendations. Our plans for the future, we have over 130 acres here. We have our fencing system divided up into intensive grazing, where we've got 100 and some animals on 12 acres here. We intend to divide the farm up in sections each year, and our goal is to have 500 head of animals here in another year or so. And we are presently the largest bison herd in Ohio right now, and we plan on maintaining it and keeping it that way. I see it as a real future for agriculture. I see it as a real blessing to this area that farmers can raise a product like this. We've kind of demonstrated something new here in Ohio. A lot of people see bison and they think it's a western type of animal, but that's not true. The last wild bison was killed in Gallipolis, Ohio here in 1797 in this state. So they are native to this state. In fact, the largest herd ever recorded was in Cincinnati, Ohio. They estimate that it was 50 miles wide and 175 miles long. So these animals adapt to the eastern climate real well. There are 2 types of bison, a mountain bison and a plains bison. And through our blood typing, we've been able to select and do a little breeding between the 2. And if you look at these bison out here, I can tell you, looking at them real quick, which has mountain bison blood and which has plains bison blood. They're basically the same type, except a plains bison is shorter, a little meatier, and a little blonder colored, and a mountain bison is tall, leaner, and a little blacker. So if you look out there and see some animals that are a little darker colored, they've got some mountain bison breeding in them. And the reason we've done that is so we get a taller, heavier, meatier type of bison. These 2 bulls, breeding bulls we have in the other pen, are perfect examples of those 2 types. The one type is the shorter, squatty one is a plains bison. The taller, leaner one is a mountain type bison. We turn those bison into the herd, and they do our breeding for us. And it's kind of an interesting story. The head boss out here are the cows. And there's a head cow that's boss of everything. And what happens during the breeding season, the bulls go into a rut. And they'll start that in another couple of weeks here. And they're kind of friendly with each other now, but you give them 2 more weeks and they'll be fighting. And what they'll do, they'll fight with each other and try to assert their dominance over each other. And while they're fighting, this cow, head cow, she'll watch these bulls fight. And then she'll decide who she wants to breed her cows, and that's the only bull she'll let breed those cows in there. So she'll do all the selecting for who does the breeding on her herd, and she'll change that year to year normally, depending on what she wants and what she doesn't want. And she won't let any other bull come into the herd. And if you look at a picture from years ago, thousands of bison on a hill, if you look real close, you'll see them in little clusters. It's not one great big herd, it's just little bitty clusters of 25 to 30 animals. And that's normally 1 head cow and 25 cows under her, and then they move as a herd. So each cow has 25 usually related animals under her, and she does the breeding for that. And what happened was, they adapt to each other, the calves and the cows, as soon as they're born, that mother sniffs that calf, and she'll never forget that smell as long as she lives. And I think in the wild, what they did was the cow, if she calved a bull calf, and the bulls were separate from the cows all year, when they came back, she could recognize by the smell that that animal was related, and she wouldn't let it breed her group of related cows. And that's how the Lord planned that, so there wouldn't be any interbreeding. But at the turn of the century, when they were all lost, fellows just threw them together, and you had a lot of inbreeding. If you look at the bison herds today, you'll see some bulls with some curved horns. You'll see some cows with some straight horns. Those are all characteristics that have crossed over from interbreeding, and we're working real hard to take those out. You won't see any of that here, simply because we worked real hard on it. Our cows, the oldest cow we have out here is 12. They'll live till they're 50 with no problem. I have a friend who has a buffalo cow that's 46 years old, and it has a calf every year. So they live a long time. And what we have here, basically, these animals, there's only one 12, all the rest are 3 or 4 years old. And I consider myself part of the great comeback. And what makes that interesting to me is I'm 44 years old, and these cows that are 3 years old, I'll be dead and buried in the ground, and by all likelihood, they'll still be having calves here for somebody else. And that makes me feel good. That makes me feel good that I'm part of that comeback, and I'll be dead and gone and buried, and here they go. And it's kind of an interesting story. The Native Americans felt, they made it, people ask me all the time, they say, well, how can you shoot these buffalo? You love them so much, how can you shoot a buffalo and eat them for meat like that? Well, that's what you have to do. That's what the Lord put them here for. Those bulls, when they get over 2 or 3 years old, you don't need them. All they'll do is kill the cows and kill the calves. They need to be moved out of the herds and put into the meat industry so we can make the money and keep raising these products. But I always like to tell the story of the Native Americans. Quantum Parker said they made a deal with the buffalo years ago. They said they talked to the buffalo, and the buffalo said, we'll give you all our bulls for meat if you make an agreement with us. And the Indian said, what's that? And he said, you bury yourself in the ground. If you bury yourself in the ground and nurture and fertilize the grass, we'll eat the grass and we'll give ourselves back to you for meat. So I like that kind of relationship with the buffalo. I work real hard for the buffalo. I take good care of them. They're happy here. They know me. I'm their head shepherd. And in return, they give me some nice big bull calves that I can sell to the public for burgers.
Kind of excited to see this old cow with the bent horn be the first one to have a calf this year. Because ironically, last year, she was one of the last cows to calve, and there was something wrong with her calf. It just couldn't stand up. It was wobbly. The other bison were kind of moving it around. I was afraid it wouldn't survive. So we decided to take the calf from the cow. And then when we took the calf from the cow, unfortunately, the calf didn't survive. And she just groaned around out there for days, the only bison cow without a calf. And so I felt kind of bad for her, so that was kind of interesting. This year, she's got the last laugh. She's the first cow to calve this year, and she has such a healthy-looking little calf, so I just thought, hats off to her. They're usually born, usually start in April, and they calve on up through to about July, August. That's the normal period right there. And we're always excited you can see the first calf on the ground, especially a nice, healthy one like that. So she gets the blue ribbon this year. She's the first one to have a calf in April.
Hey, girl. I bet you this will make you excited. See what we're gonna do, huh? You hear, girl? See what we're gonna do. What do you think there, old mean number 38? Huh? I see you're right up here. Right up here, ready to go on out, eh? Well, just let me check your test and I'll open it up for you. You go like this. Let me take a little walk here. You go like this.
Bison, this is the best time of the year, springtime, when the grass is growing. This is the first time of the year we've turned them out, and normally before we turn them out, a good farmer chore is to go around and check all the fence and make sure there's no branches on her, make sure the wire's working, make sure any refuse is blown in over the winter is picked up so the calves won't eat them or the cows won't get them tangled in their feet or something. So what I've done is gone around and checked all the fence, made sure everything's working great, and here my hosts are standing there waiting for me to open up the door. I think you'll see some real excitement here in just about a couple seconds as soon as we open the door. And we'll let them get to what they've been waiting for all winter long. What do you think, Chief? Huh? What do you think, old buddy? What do you think, Cheyenne? You gonna let me slide by there? Huh?
We'll get the shop. Yeah, a little control. We'll get the shop. I've got the fence turned on so I can trust them when I turn them out here, and that makes it a little difficult. Okay, girls, all yours. Good time. Come on, girls. They'll eat for a few seconds and then they'll let her rip, I believe. Come on, girl. Okay, Mama. I like that girl, son. Ah, cute little booger. He doesn't. He was just born yesterday. He doesn't know what green grass is. But Mama does. He doesn't even know what green grass is. He'll like this. You know, little fella, you'll learn the foot system. Cute things, aren't they?
Yeah.
About 30 pounds. That's Mama. Yeah, now he'll find out what grass is. Oh, they're prettier up there, mud and all. Learn the foot system. I wish it was about a foot higher. Buffalo, normally they come out and they just go round and around and around all excited. You give them half hour, an hour, they'll realize they're somewhere different. Especially young ones.
I think the most interesting thing living on a farm is you have a sense of freedom. Not freedom of the type most people would have in mind, but the freedom that, according to how the weather is going to start on your day, you choose for yourself how you're going to spend that day. Now, there's a large segment of the day is going to go toward your chores, taking care of the animals, putting in crops, getting fields ready, harvesting crops. But it's your choice to take that time and reap from it what you can. Seems like I'm always looking for time to try to just sit down and pick up something to read, just for relaxation. You just seem to take each moment, instead of just existing, you live it. And I think that's where the children have really grown in their character. I can see changes in them just in such a short amount of time, in the way that they take everything as a challenge rather than a burden, and that's something I really appreciate in them. It's just a sense of knowing that they're needed, and out of that grows that sense of responsibility. And through that, they've learned some excellent work habits, even at their ages. It's not unusual for any of them to be able to tell their children they started unloading hay wagons when they were 4 or 5 years old, even if it was the type of thing where they just sat on the top bale and ran into the house to refill the cooler with cold water. So just a sense of belonging, I think, has really added to their growth and their personalities. It's something that gives them a special quality. About 195 years ago in Belmont County, Ohio, a gentleman by the name of Reuben Perkins built a log cabin to establish a settlement for himself and his wife Elizabeth and their family. And that cabin is still standing to this time, although it's almost in total disrepair. But that sparked an idea in Fred's mind when we visited that about 5 years ago. So Fred took the dimensions of that building and constructed this one. He sawed all the logs from local poplar, and he and the children spent the greater share of a year working on this. It became quite a family project, but we are known for usually having at least one project a year, and it was a lot of fun. They put their whole heart into it because they sensed the fact that they were carrying on a tradition that had been started so many years ago by their ancestors. And the concept of the building originally was to run a fur and tanning shop. And that was before the buffalo came into our lives. And once that happened, the concept of developing a meat store pricked our hearts, and we just decided that it would be something that really would be the answer to a lot of people's prayers as far as their health problems go. And through that, we've been venturing out into different areas. We've gotten orders from all over the country for the meat. We run a very good mail order business, and that's the part that really is encouraging. And you know in your heart that it's doing a lot of good things for people's health. And it certainly isn't your average meat store. Most people come here and they expect to see something on the order of a modern deli, lots of chrome and glass and shiny surfaces, but I think what they really find they enjoy and appreciate. It's unique, and it recaptures a lot of historical flavor that people never realize that they miss so much. And they can come into our shop. We could show them artifacts that have been native to the state, reproductions that are very good quality. We can show them buffalo hides that we've tanned, which is something that's been in the Perkins ancestry for a number of years. And I think when they leave, they have a sense of gaining more than what they'd ever hoped to discover when they were on their way to come. It's just a unique experience in itself. The fact that we've had people from all over the world not only coming by, not necessarily just to see the buffalo, but just to visit a family that has had their roots in this country for over 300 years. The children, at times, the way most projects go, get a little disheartened when they aren't going as quickly as, in children's minds, the way they'd like. But it's the concept that you do your work first and then you have your time off. And no matter whether they're pouring concrete on the job, which is something that Fred and his dad started 20 years ago, and now there are 3 generations together in the business. Our 3 sons are pouring concrete along with their dad. Their grandfather has just, within the past couple of years, retired, but still oversees a lot of the technical jobs. The children always know that when there's time off, it's something that they will cherish all their lives. In fact, one high school friend made a statement once that she couldn't quite understand, having known the way I grew up, why I would deprive my children of so many of the things in life. And it's something I've really appreciated over the years, that it isn't things that make people happy, it's experiences, it's that interaction and that love that they share as a family, whether they're fishing or just gathering firewood, riding their bikes, getting the horses out, cutting the grass, weeding in the garden. It's just that interaction of knowing that they're spending time together and helping each other, and that's what memories are made of. We have been so blessed. God has just really answered our dreams. We have 6 children, and what a blessing to have just been able to get to know each child as an individual. Our oldest son is Sean. Our oldest daughter is Shannon. Our middle daughter is Sarah. Our middle son is Seth.
Catfish.
And then we have a set of twins, and their names are Scotty and Stacy. You know, Fred has a statement, and I think it really hits home. He calls us the comebackers, and I certainly think that's what we are.
Ooh.